Hi friends, welcome to Eyes of My Heart with Vicki Jean. And I'm up here in my office getting ready to start my day. It's a Sunday, so I'm getting ready to go to church. But recently I had a friend ask me that he was putting together kind of a reading list and what books have I read lately. And he and we kind of communicate and share our favorite books or books that have challenged us and made us think outside the box a little bit. But they've all enriched our lives in some personal way, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, psychologically. And so I started going back through my library, and I think I sent him about, 6 or 7, 8 books of titles over the years. And what it did is it made me go back and start to read some of the things that have impacted my life. And I told him in there, some of them, I didn't agree with everything in the book, but there was something that would come up in the book that were the words or the idea or the concept or the truth that I needed to hear in my heart at this point or at that point in my spiritual journey. And that's how I read every book, being open to the Spirit. The Spirit doesn't just speak through the Bible or through the authors that are coming out of our own religious belief system or denominational belief system, because God is everywhere, always willing to speak. And if we're only looking for God to speak through a certain lens, we are missing out. So I wanted to read something that I found. It actually wasn't even in a book that I had sent to him, but I found this I'm a fan also of Frederick Buechner, who died, I think, just in 2022 in his 90s. But he said this: the original shimmering self gets buried so deep that most of us end up hardly living out of it at all. Instead, we live out of all the other selves, which we are constantly putting on and taking off, like coats and hats against the world's weather. The original shimmering self. It gets covered up. It gets forgotten by a lot of the teachings, by our experiences, our traumas, our culture, and we forget to live out of that true self. And we start putting on these different selves, whether it's in our workplace, corporately, whether it's in our social relationships, whether it's through our religion and our church environment, if you're involved in that. But that original shimmering self, oh, people, that is the greatest truth ever. We were not born into depravity and into darkness. We are born as sparks of the divine God, the love of God, manifested in Christ and alive in us. Who told you anything different? It's interesting in the story of the Garden of Eden, whether you think that's truth, literal, or a analogy, a metaphor, the truth is the same. Adam and Eve forgot who they were, and they listened to a voice telling them they needed to be something more. And it led them down a very kind of dark path because they forgot who they were, the shimmering, the light within. And they tried to adopt another self that they originally thought was going to make them greater, and it wasn't. Because they were seeking for something outside of themselves. And in that story, they reached for, in the tree of life, the fruit from the tree of life, thinking that is what will make them more like God. And they forgot. And when God, it says, walked with them it said the cool of the day. And after they had eaten of the fruit, and he approached them and said, where are you, Adam? And they finally come out, and they're ashamed because they suddenly feel or recognize that they're naked. And for some reason, they're suddenly ashamed where they hadn't been before. And he asked them the question, and they answered this question that basically explained why they took of the fruit. And then they said, we are naked and we're ashamed. And here's God's response. Who told you that? Who told you to live in shame of who you are? Who told you that? And I feel like we need to ask ourselves that question. all these different selves that we think we have to wear. Either if you're in the spiritual world, you think make you look more spiritual, more Christian, or whatever spirituality you're seeking after, you think there's this hierarchy up that you have to adhere to, or whether it's just in your corporate world, your social world, your circle of influence, you think you're reaching for more and more, and this is the thing you need. Stop. The original shimmering self gets buried so deep that most of us hardly live out of it at all. And instead, we live out of all the other selves, which we are constantly putting on and taking off based on what we think we need in that moment. You will never know freedom. And it is for freedom that we have been set free. We are told that in the Holy Scriptures. You will never know freedom till you remember who you've always been. Adam and Eve forgot. And they reached for something else. And sometimes we reach for spiritual things, religious things, doctrinal things. Or we reach for popularity, prestige, power, money, possessions, relationships. The original self is shimmering with the light of love and light. Don't lose it. Remove the barriers and let your light so shine in this world that your Creator, God divine, love divine, will be seen. God bless you guys. Take care.